Woodall. I believe that moving to a new state will change your life. You can be happier, more fulfilled, and have a richer lifestyle when you move to a state that you love. How do I know? Because I've moved many times and lived a fabulous life in more than 20 states. But without someone to guide you, moving can be stressful. So I created an online guide called Make the Move so I can help you find the perfect town and plan every stage of your move. Because when you have a plan and someone to guide you, it will give you the confidence to move to a new state and live the amazing life that you deserve. So go to AlisonWoodall.com and download my Make the Move guide and let's start planning your move. So today I'm going to talk about what it really feels like when you move to a new state. How do I know what moving feels like? Because I've moved internationally several times. I've lived and worked in over 20 states. I've moved as a single person with everything I own in a backpack, and I've moved 4 times in the last 4 years with my family. I've moved when I had no money, and I've moved when money wasn't an issue, and I've moved when I felt I had no choice because circumstances seemed out of my control, and I've also left 2 states that I wasn't ready to leave. Why am I telling you this? Because I want you to know that while your reasons for moving are unique to you, I understand so much of what you're going through, and I hope that what I share in the next 30 to 40 minutes will help you deal with that roller coaster of emotions that you'll feel when you move. And if you would like a little more guidance, you can download my Make the Move guide at AlisonWoodall.com. That's Alison with 1 L, or you can click the link on the notes section just below this video. So let's get started. If you have done your research and you know that you are moving to somewhere that is perfect for you and your family, if you're moving with family, then your emotions are going to follow a very similar pattern to the one I'm about to describe. You may power through some of the stages of moving faster, and some of the stages may last a little longer, but in general, the bigger your budget, the less you're leaving behind, and the worse your standard of living currently is, the easier it's going to be to move. But the smaller your budget, the more you love your current life, and the higher your standard of living, the harder it's going to be to move. And the worst situation is if you feel forced to move for reasons out of your control. For example, if your spouse or partner gets a great job in another state and wants to move, but you don't, or if you need to move to look after family members, it can make moving feel extra difficult. But even if you are excited for your move, if you're certain that you're doing the right thing, you are still going to have moments of doubt or anxiousness about your move. And the people who tell you that they regretted nothing when they left their state and never had a moment of sadness or doubt, they're either lying or they had the most miserable life that they were happy to leave behind. Moving is hard. There is no getting away from that. It's hard both physically and emotionally, but when you know what to expect, it makes it just a little bit easier. So if you watched any of my other videos, and there's a link to the YouTube channel where all my videos are, you will know that I love to break down processes into steps, which is what I will do in a minute, but I also love to give you analogies. So here's your analogy. I think moving is just like childbirth, because no matter how well you plan and prepare, having a child is stressful and exhausting, and so is moving. But once you're through those crazy first months with your baby, or you've had several children, you forget the pain and the tiredness, and you're willing to do it again because you realize that it was absolutely worth it. And that applies just the same to moving, because once you get through those first crazy few months, and you realize that you did the right thing, or after you've moved several times, the whole process becomes so much easier. Just like if you have your second or your third or your 4th child, it's generally much easier than your first child. So as we go through this live and I discuss each stage of the moving process, and also when you're going through your actual move, I want you to remember what I call the 4 A's. They are attitude, acceptance, adventure, and action. Because number 1, when you have a great attitude, everything about the moving process is easier. And number 2, when you accept the things that you can't control, especially when plans change and things go wrong, it is also going to make your move easier. And the third thing is when you see moving as an adventure, it helps you embrace all the changes that moving inevitably creates. And then the fourth thing is when you take action, it creates momentum. So when you're tired or you're overwhelmed or you're feeling anxious or miserable or lonely, taking action, no matter how small that action is going to allow you to feel a little bit better and a little bit more in control. So now you know that moving is just like having a baby, and you'll keep those 4 A's front and center during your move. Let's talk about what you really came to this live for, and that's to learn what it's really like when you move to a new state. So stage number 1 is simply just deciding to move, and you'll most likely feel excited and optimistic and hopeful about the future at this stage. Most of the time when people decide to move, it's because they are unhappy with some aspect of their lives. Either the cost of living or the politics or social issues like crime or schooling are usually some of the main reasons that people want to move. And sometimes you don't move because you feel discontented. It could be that you or your spouse is headhunted for a job that you never expected, and there's no way that you can say no. And that happened to us when we moved to California. My husband was headhunted. We hadn't even thought about moving to California, and he was just given the opportunity of a lifetime, and so we said yes. If you feel in control of your decision to move, it's easy to get excited about the future and imagine how great your new life will be. But even if you're moving reluctantly or for reasons that feel out of your control, you can always choose to have a positive attitude, because no matter what the situation, you could choose to stay in the state that you're currently in. Your life may be almost unbearable if you do stay, but it's always a choice that's open to you. So if you choose not to stay, if you choose to move it to a new state for whatever reason, decide that you're going to have a great attitude and treat that move as an adventure, and everything is going to be so much easier. Which is very important when you get to stage 2, which is planning your move. And this is where you're going to feel the most stress and exhaustion and doubt. There are going to be many moments of happiness too when things go to plan, but in my opinion, planning your move is the worst part of moving to a new state. If you are struggling to decide which state or town or neighborhood to move to, if your budget is very small, if you don't have a home to sell, or you're moving with family, it can be even more stressful. And that was the reason why I created my Make the Move guide. Because when you break down planning for your move into simple step-by-step like process, it makes everything much easier. Because the first thing that you need to do is get very, very clear on exactly what you want from your new life. And then you need to create a detailed budget that shows you exactly what you can afford. Because when you know what you want and what you can afford, it makes it much easier to find the perfect place to move to. I also know that selling your current home if you own your home, and finding a new home in a new state, finding a job and healthcare and schools if you have kids, can feel overwhelming, but it really is just a step-by-step process. And in my Make the Move guide, I have a series of videos and check sheets and a detailed budgeting spreadsheet that shows you exactly how to find the perfect place to move to, create a budget, and plan for all the logistics of your move. So if you're interested in downloading my Make the Move guide, you can go to www.alisonwoodall.com and hit the red button, or you can just click on the link below. But you must realize that something is always going to go wrong in the planning stage, no matter how well you plan. But the better you plan, the smaller that issue that comes up will be. And you have to accept that some days you'll feel positive and you'll be looking forward to life in your new state, and other days you will feel doubtful and anxious about your decision to move, and that is totally normal. For some people, this planning stage can take months or years, especially if you keep going back and forth on your decision to move. But the clearer you are on your reasons for leaving, and the more certain you are that you've found a new state that is perfect for your needs, the easier it's going to be to get through the planning stage. And I can tell you from personal experience that the deciding and planning stages can be done in 8 days, from deciding to move to hitting the road. How do I know? Because we did it. We decided to leave California on a Sunday, and we booked the pods that day. We then spent Monday and Tuesday figuring out the logistics, booking services, packing boxes, and dismantling furniture. My husband handed his notice in on the Tuesday. Luckily, I can work from anywhere, so I kept my job. And then on the Wednesday, the reality of what we'd done really sunk in, and those intense emotions hit us: sadness, regret, doubt, and fear. We loved our life in California, but we knew we couldn't stay. So we just kept on packing and packing and packing in spite of how we felt, because we had a 3,000 square foot home to pack up by ourselves and load into pods on Thursday and Friday. We said goodbye to our friends on Saturday, finished the last of the packing on Sunday, and then we hit the road early on Monday morning. We were very lucky in that we owned a home in Georgia that we could move back into, but that was a whole nother story, because it had had tenants in it for 4 years and it was almost wrecked. But we didn't have to, but if we didn't have a home to move into, we would have taken whatever rental property was available in our price range and in an area that we were looking at moving to. Or we would have found an Airbnb or a long stay hotel. Or worst case scenario, we would have bought a travel trailer to live in. I never recommend packing up and leaving so quickly to anyone, as it's physically exhausting and one of the most stressful things that we've ever done. And I couldn't have done it without the help of my kids, but we proved that it was possible. So once you've planned we've decided where to move to, and you've planned your move, found your home, a job and healthcare, and figured out how to get all of your stuff to your new home, you are ready for stage 3, which is hitting the road. And this is where having a sense of adventure will make everything so much easier. The closer that you get to your moving date, the more intense your feelings are going to be. If you're looking forward to your move, then you will be happy and excited, with maybe, a few doubts about what your new life is going to be like, and maybe a few worries about your trip to your new state. But overall, you're going to be looking forward to it. But if you are moving reluctantly, if you're not sure that you're moving to the right place, or if you're just more of an anxious person, then the closer you get to your moving date, the more anxious and doubtful you will feel. You will probably be completely exhausted too, which is going to make all of those emotions feel more intense and harder to deal with. But just keep going and know that it is going to get better, and do not leave anything until the last day, because that is just going to add to your stress. You should be all packed up well in advance of your moving date, ideally by the morning before you move, or at the latest the afternoon of the day before you move. So how will you feel when you close the door on your home for the last time? Unless you hate your home and your life, you are probably going to cry or feel like crying. It's an incredibly sad moment, and the more you love your home and the longer you've lived there, the harder it will be. Accept that you're going to feel awful, but stay focused on your reasons for leaving and how good your new life will be. As you drive away, especially if people come to wave goodbye, expect it to feel like one of the worst moments of your life. I've left so many different places in different countries and different states, and the more I love a place, the harder it is to leave. And no matter how many places I've left, it's still an incredibly emotional experience. If you are getting on a plane and flying, then you'll quickly get caught up in the busyness of traveling, which will distract you a little bit from your feelings. But for most of you, you are about to begin a road trip to your new state, which will just prolong your feelings of sadness. But I promise you, the further you get from your old home and the closer you get to your new home, the less sadness you'll feel and the more excited you'll get about your new life. If you've watched any of my videos, you will know that I love road trips. So I always suggest that if your time and your budget allows, don't just drive straight to your new home. Plan a road trip to see some of this amazing country. We took an epic 6-week road trip when we moved from Florida to California. But even moving from California back to Georgia last year, when we had a very small budget and a very limited time frame, we figured out how to make the drive into a 10-day road trip through the northern states, and it was just amazing. If you're driving a U-Haul or pulling everything that you own in a trailer, could you plan some stops in towns along the way and enjoy a really nice dinner out? Or maybe take a slightly more scenic route? Or my favorite, could you book a night at a really high-end hotel on the way to your new home to reward yourself after the stress of moving? Because the more that you are looking forward to the journey and you have things that you're kind of thinking about and looking forward to, the easier it's going to be to deal with the sadness of saying goodbye to your old life, and the easier it's going to be to get excited about what lies ahead. And what lies ahead is stage number 4, and that is getting to your new home and unpacking. Once you've made it to your new home, you are going to be even more exhausted, not only from packing up, but also from the long drive. Do you hear the theme here? It's exhaustion, exhaustion. I'm not trying to be negative. I am just trying to prepare you. So when you feel that exhaustion, you'll think, oh yeah, Alison kept telling me I was going to feel exhausted, because you really do. If you're not moving into your new home immediately, then at least you don't have to unpack, but it can also feel a little bit unsettling because you're not in a permanent home. If you're in a rental, in an Airbnb, or still searching for that town or that place to call home, you're probably a more adventurous person and you do okay with those feelings of uncertainty. But if you're moving without a place to live, this is where you really need to focus on the 4 A's. You need to keep a positive attitude. You need to accept that it is just going to take time to find that perfect place, and treat it as an adventure. And then keep taking action every single day by searching listings and exploring new areas until you do find that perfect place that you want to move to. And if you're moving straight into your new home, whether it's a permanent home or just a rental, you will probably feel totally overwhelmed by the task of unpacking and settling in. Take it one box at a time. Put all of the boxes into the rooms that they belong in and unpack just the essentials for bedrooms, bathrooms, and the kitchen. Everything else is optional. And I know that because when we moved to California, we literally only took our essentials and 3 mattresses and blankets and everything, bedding for the mattresses, and a TV. We didn't even take box springs or anything like that. We had to buy patio furniture because we literally had nothing to sit on, and it took about 6 or 8 weeks for all the furniture that we'd ordered to be delivered. So just get everything in the right room and just unpack the essentials. During the unpacking stage, my favorite saying is, done is better than perfect. You have months to get everything into that perfect place and just where you want it. Right now, you just need to get it unpacked and sort of in the right area. Get your kids to unpack their bedrooms, even if they're little. Let your spouse or partner help if you have one. Even if it's not done exactly the way you want it, at least the boxes are going to be out of the way. Usually getting set up in the house and unpacking, that's kind of my coordination. But when we moved to Georgia, my desk and my office chair were the first things out of the pod, and I literally set up and started work as soon as they were unloaded. So my husband and my kids unpacked everything. And was it perfect? Not at all, but I was so grateful to them because everything was unloaded and sort of in the place it needed to be. And then I had time to get everything exactly where it needed to be in the weeks after we'd moved in, which is when we get on to stage 5, which is settling in during your first month. And let me tell you that in that first month, even if you feel like you're prepared for your move, everything is going to be different and some things will be very strange. For example, when we moved to California, I had never heard of tri-tip before, and I know it's a very Californian thing. I'd never heard of it, even though I grew up on a farm in England with beef cows. It is a very California thing. And the first time someone gave me a bottle of tahini, I thought it was fish food. That's how little I knew about all these things that Californians just take for granted. And then when I first moved to the South, which is nearly 20 years ago, the idea of biscuits and gravy or sweet tea was totally weird to me. So the further that you move away from your old home, the more different things are going to be. Expect grocery shopping to take twice as long as you search for replacements for your favorite brands. You think that everything is nationwide, and some things are, but there are a lot of things that are specific to a region. You also need to prepare yourself for some crazy experiences as you find a doctor, a dentist, a hairdresser, a nail technician, and all of those other services that you took for granted in your old town. If you have neighbours, co-workers, or if you can join a local Facebook group, these will all be great sources for recommendations, which are going to make that first month just a little easier. But when you expect everything to be new and weird, you can treat this stage of your move like a big adventure, which again goes back to one of your 4 A's. Be adventurous about everything. I will literally eat or drink anything that someone gives me. I still think a michelada or a mangonado, they're kind of strange because I just wasn't in California long enough to grow to love them. But after spending so much time in the South, I did grow to love biscuits and gravy and sweet tea, but not necessarily together. So you never know what you will love about your new hometown. But if you aren't adventurous, if you don't get out there, if you don't try things, you just don't know what you're missing out on. And acceptance is also vital at this stage of your move. Accept that nothing is going to be the same as where you came from. Accept that your home will be in chaos. If you have kids, accept that they will have meltdowns, and expect to cry and feel totally overwhelmed and exhausted at some point yourself. And usually the feeling of overwhelm comes on you over something completely minor, like not being able to find your favorite food at the grocery store. And again, this is totally normal. But the more research you do about your new town and the better it suits your needs, the easier this settling in stage is going to be. And then that takes us to stage 6, which is around about the 2nd or 3rd month after you move in and when your real life begins. That first month passes in a blur of unpacking, registering kids in school if you have kids, meeting new people and figuring out the basic things you need, like grocery stores and restaurants and banks and driver's license and tags and all of those kind of things. But after that initial buzz and adrenaline wears off, you have to begin living your real life. If you didn't budget well enough, this is also when money gets really tight, and it may even feel as if it's just as expensive to live in your new state as the state that you left. But really, it's just that you didn't account for all of the costs that you were going to incur. When you download my Make the Move guide, I will make sure that you budget for every expense, not just the cost of your home and a moving truck. That way, money stress is one less thing to worry about at this stage in your move. If you started a new job, at this stage, co-workers will expect you to know what you're doing. Your kids will no longer be the new kids in school. You'll have discovered the things about your new home and your new town that aren't as good about your old home or your old town, and you will really begin to miss the people that you left behind. Basically, you are just going to be missing all the things that were familiar to you and your old routines. And again, this is totally normal, and it's just because you've not lived in your new town long enough to create those new routines or to build deep friendships. We moved to California at the height of COVID, so I had no way of meeting anyone as I worked from home and everything was shut down. It was an incredibly lonely and isolating experience, but having moved so many times, I knew that this stage would pass as I've learned how to make friends and quickly become part of a community. I'm sure that you've heard the expression that people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and it's so true when you move. I needed friends when I moved to California, and the only place that was open was a gym. But we worked out outside in 100-degree heat, literally as ash from the most recent wildfire fell all around us. It was not ideal, but I met the most amazing people and immediately felt part of a community. And then later on, I met people in my neighborhood and through my children's friends. But that first, me reaching out and joining the gym was my first kind of baby step into feeling part of a community. My steps for finding friends, I have several tips. The first one is to say hi to everyone, no matter who they are or how miserable or intimidating they look. And I try to start a conversation with as many people as possible, because when you're in a new town, you have to reach out to people and you have to accept any friendship that is offered to you. You can't be choosy. When you've been there for a few months, you can start to distance yourself from the people who you realize maybe aren't really your kind of people, but initially those people could introduce you to someone who will become a great friend. And then, of course, there is this romanticized ideal that when you move, your new neighbors will come and say hi and bring you cookies. If you expect that, you are going to be disappointed. And if it did happen to you, or if it does happen to you, give that person an extra big hug, because it really isn't the norm. 98% of the time, it is going to be up to you to reach out to your new neighbors and show them how much fun you are and why they should include you in their circle of friends. Maybe you should be the one who takes them cookies. I've done that in the past. But what my husband and my family tend to do is we throw a big party some point, a month or two after we've moved somewhere new, and we invite everybody that we've met in the first few weeks. I understand not everybody is a party person, so if you are not a party person, then you can always volunteer for something. every organization needs volunteers. And if you volunteer for something that you enjoy, you are going to meet people who you have things in common with. And everybody is going to be so grateful to you for helping out. Schools, churches, senior homes, food banks, and animal shelters are all great places to start. And obviously, if you're into health and fitness, gyms are a great place to meet like-minded people too. So in the first couple of months after you move, say yes to everything, volunteer as much as you can, and talk to everyone, because it's the quickest way to settle into your new community. And then stage 7 is about 3 to 6 months after you move. The newness is gone, you settled into your home, met lots of people and started to make friends, and you found your favourite places and created your new routines. You may still be adjusting to the weather, which may even be scary or miserable depending on where you've moved to and which season you've moved in, but I promise you will eventually get used to the weather no matter where you move. But this is also the stage where you need to create a bucket list, or what I like to call an adventure list. An adventure list is literally a list of all of the things that you want to do in your new town or in your new state. And they can range from free or cheap things all the way up to expensive dream activities. And going back to the 4 A's, this is where action is particularly important. So make sure you plan to do something every week, especially if you're struggling to love your new town. It can be as simple as trying a new restaurant or walking at a new park, and invite your new friends and neighbours with you. It's a great way to create memories and share experiences with new friends. When you download my Make the Move guide, one of the first things I get you to do is to list all of the things that you want to be different about your new life. And after you've been in your new state for a few months, this is the time to revisit that life, to ensure that you're doing all of the things that you plan to do and living the life that you'd imagined when you first decided to move. Because you moved to create a better life, and it's all too easy to slip back into old routines and habits, working too much, not exercising, watching too much TV, and before you know it, you're living your old life, but just in your new state. So keep exploring, keep trying new hobbies, spend as much time with family and new friends doing new experiences. You may not feel like it to begin with, but I promise you, once you get out there and start enjoying your life, it will be worth it. And that takes us to stage 8, which is 6 to 12 months after you move. This is where you decide if you actually like your new town. And if you don't, you need to look at yourself first. Have you got out there? Have you embraced everything that your new state has to offer? And have you talked to everyone you meet without judging them? To give you a good example, I joined a book club when I first moved back to Georgia, and one of the ladies I met had just moved from California. I missed California so much, so I was really excited to talk to her. I'd never met her before, and she knew nothing about me, but during our conversation, all she kept telling me was how much she hated the South, and especially the local people that she'd met. Now, my husband and my kids are born and raised in the South, and even though I still have my English accent, the South is where I feel like I belong. So I felt like she was judging everything that I loved. Consequently, I had no interest in talking with her again, and I certainly would never have invited her to anything that I had going on, and I'm sure many other people that she spoke to felt the same. So the sad thing is her attitude just reinforced her idea that people from the South were unfriendly, but really it all started with her. So again, it goes back to those 4 A's, because when you have a great attitude, when you accept people for who they are, and you embrace every opportunity as an adventure, and you get out there to take action to belong to your new community, everything is so much easier. The more effort that you put into your life, the more you will enjoy your new state. And that brings me to the final stage, which is number 9, and that is at the end of your first year. If this move is your first move, I can promise you it will be your hardest move ever. It goes back again to that childbirth analogy. No matter how well you prepare yourself, you don't truly know what to expect until you've had a child. But once you've had one kid, every other kid is easier. Yes, I know some kids and some birth experiences are harder than others, but at least you know what the process is. And it's just the same with moving. Every move is different too, but the first one is always the hardest. So if you have spent a year in your new town or your new state and you've done everything that you can to make it feel like home and you still don't love it, do not stay. Go explore and move again. I like to call your first move your stepping stone move, because sometimes it's just a stepping stone on the way to your final destination, and that's okay. You'll have so many more adventures and live such an amazing life on your way to finding your perfect hometown. You've moved once, you know what to do, and each move gets easier, so don't stay somewhere that you don't love. Be ready to move on. But hopefully, fingers crossed, you did all your research, you found the perfect place, and you are in love with your new town. If that's the case, double down on all of the things that you love about your new town, your new state, and your new life, and do more of them. Create an adventure list of all the things that you want to do in your second year, and your third year, and for the rest of your life, living in that perfect town. So that is it. Those are the 9 stages of moving. So just to recap, stage 1, deciding to move. You're going to be filled with excitement, optimism, and hope. Stage 2, planning your move. You're probably going to be stressed, exhausted, and start to doubt your decisions. Stage 3, hitting the road, is when you'll cry and feel like an emotional wreck as you say goodbye. But the closer you get to your new home and the greater your sense of adventure, the better you will begin to feel. Stage 4 is getting to your new home and unpacking. This is where it's chaos and where you need to have a done is better than perfect mentality to get you through this stage. Stage 5 is settling in during your first month. This is where everything is new and overwhelming, confusing and frustrating, but it's also filled with so much joy and so many new discoveries. Stage 6 is roughly 2 to 3 months after you move, and this is the hardest time because it's when you begin living your real life and you miss your family and friends and your old routines. So you must force yourself to get out there, volunteer, join groups and say hi to everyone and say yes to all the adventures that you are offered. Then stage 7 is 3 to 6 months after you move, when the newness is gone, so you need to create that adventure list of all the things that you want to do and the places to visit so you can really get to know your new town and your new state. Stage 8 is around about 6 to 12 months after you move. This is when you decide if you actually like your new life. And if you don't feel like you belong, you need to get out and really make an effort before you make a final decision about whether you like your new town. And then stage 9 is somewhere around about your first year, and this is where you decide if it's time to move on or if you found the perfect place to live. And in my experience, no matter how many times you move, the cycle and the emotions are still the same, but you learn to move through each stage faster and you learn how to manage your feelings better. And depending on your situation and the circumstances of your move, you may spend a little more time in one part of this moving cycle than in another. But because I've moved so often and I love the experience of moving, not necessarily exhaustion, but everything that goes with the moving experience as a whole, I can not only move in 8 days if I really have to, but I hope I'll never have to do that again. But it only takes me about 5 to 6 months to get through all 9 stages and decide if a town is somewhere that I want to stay for a longer period. But even if I'm ready to move on, I always give it a year before we move, just to make sure that I've put all of my energy into making it somewhere that is my perfect home. But if you can focus on all the reasons why you decided to move and all the things that are better about your new life, and you can maintain those 4 A's by keeping a great attitude, accepting that whatever you feel is okay, but also taking action to make your circumstances better, and approaching everything with a spirit of adventure, your experience of moving to a new state will be a lot easier. And if you want guidance every single step of the way, download my Make the Move guide by going to AlisonWoodall.com and hitting the red button, or by clicking on the link in the show notes. And I will show you how to find the perfect town to suit all of your needs. I'll show you how to create a budget that accounts for all of your costs, and I will help you plan every aspect of your move, from finding the right realtor, the perfect home, all the way through to packing up and hitting the road. Because the better you plan, the more you can relax and enjoy the amazing life-changing adventure that is moving to a new state.